Okay, so good afternoon, Jesus. How are you doing today?
I'm good. And yourself?
I'm doing pretty great. Can't really complain. The first thing I wanted to really, I guess, go off into since you are a world renowned film director, you have awards. One thing I wanted to ask you, just for the listeners as well, is how did you get started in the overall entertainment industry?
My start was with a small independent production called Eye on It that I created initially on public access television out of a need to serve my community. And in that process, I was actually teaching myself production, and I learned and discovered that this was something that I was really good at. And the show took off. I had a lot of major artists and celebrities and different people on the show, and it generated a lot of buzz within the culture. It was nothing before it. There was nothing like it that came before it. So it was definitely innovative, but it launched an opportunity for me to get into this space that I didn't realize I had a tremendous talent.
So, with launching that entity, did that help you overall become a filmmaker? Because I know going into your backstory about your life, I know you survived a near fatal incident. And I know that's one thing that kind of helped you go into the life of the entertainment industry as well. So, can you talk about that a little bit more on what was the documental change that happened in your life that made you want to change and go into this industry?
Well, I never wanted to go into the industry. I think even today I'm still very anti-industry. I'm anti-system. I'm the definition of an artist, right? I don't care about money at all. All the decisions I make are to serve the art,
Right.
and I think that's really hard for other people to wrap their minds around. I believe in this idea that I've been trying to promote to friends in the industry of art over algorithms. I think content should be created with you know for people to appreciate you know the beauty and life, and also the messaging should be around to promote elements of social good, whether you're highlighting hardships, not for the purpose of glorifying it, but to create change or inspiration. um, I think we do ourselves a disservice as society to use these powerful mediums that influence our daily lives and our thought process, and our egos and our interactions, to kind of diminish our character. And
Right.
we're in a place where you see the world is suffering. Um, my latest film, and I don't want to jump ahead in your questions, but my latest film is addressing mental health, and I think we're at a critical mass in terms of things are getting really bad, and they're going to get much worse before they get better, and they might not get better if more artists aren't creating content that's going to help save humanity.
Yeah, that's something that I'm glad you kind of mentioned because in the age of technology now, I think a lot of people are setting aside the value of art and their expertise rather than just becoming viral, just becoming famous. So it is a lack of pure artists out here that doesn't just want to become famous, that doesn't just want to get viral on Instagram or social media as a whole. But also, since you did mention some of your films, let's discuss your newest film that's going to come out next year, well, in December of 2021, your Suicide Saint. So we could talk about that now, for example. I know you did mention a lot about mental health, and that is one thing that you like to emphasize about with this film and also with your activism work as well.
Sure. Suicide Saint is a film that we're going into production now. We're in pre-production. We're going to be shooting this fall between Newark, LA, and Mexico. We have a phenomenal cast of um, very, very talented artists. One of our leads is actually a new actor. He's been in some independent stuff and some projects that I worked on. He played a supporting role in my last film, Asian Mob. But I was I was just so amazed by his talent, um, just this raw talent and this presence, um, that I wrote this character entirely for him. We actually, well, inside story, I turned down 4 million cash already because I had another investor offering to um, put some money into the film, because that's not the whole budget, but put some money into the film, and they wanted to plug in. They loved the story so much and the concept, that the caveat was that they wanted to plug in one of their guys to play this part, this lead part. And I was like, no, there's nobody else who can play the character Vincent Cross, besides Ron Aviator Watson. So yeah, so Suicide Saint is my next production. We're going to be dropping the film late next year. We're looking at a release date of 12/22/21. So we're way in advance of preparing for that in terms of
Right.
marketing. But the market is important because the film isn't just about a movie drop and people going to see it. It's about this movement that we're creating to drive awareness around mental health. So a lot of our engagement now, and a lot of films don't do PR this with this much lead time, but we're doing one phase of PR and interviews now, more around the production, because we are providing access to the set for students at Capital Prep, and a unique partnership with the Sean Combs Foundation for our SICK Film School. SICK is SIC, stands for
Right.
Social Impact Content. So everything, correlates, all the synergies. We have an amazing partnership with the Jordan Porco Foundation. The United Nations is back in the film, but we're doing a lot of PR now, not for me to be any more famous, right? Because you said you're not doing this to get famous. By the
Right.
way, don't follow me. Don't go to Hezues R at Instagram and follow me. I don't want more followers, because then I won't be an artist. Then I'll have to be an influencer, and I don't want to be that type of influencer.
Right. I definitely think it's a huge difference between an artist and an influencer.
It is, and it's a terrible shame because um, you know, art is the thing that has the power to give us, to inspire us and give us purpose, right? And then when
Right.
you have somebody who's an influencer, we kind of regulate all that down to like an OnlyFans account, or like like the things that people are getting after are very selfish intentions. Like it's about personal gain.
Right.
And I think the point of art is about not what you can take from society, but what you can give. And everybody's putting themselves in a position. It's great that technology allows us to self-publish, and you don't have to go, through the bureaucracy, or the barrier to entry in these studio systems, or publishers or radio stations. You can just put out your own content. But then, you know, it behooves us to that we then have all this power that we're just throwing away by, populating the world with a bunch of nonsense. I have a good friend of mine who says mediocrity is the new black. Like that's the trend right now.
Exactly.
The standards are lowered, if you will. But I think in chaos there's always opportunity. I think it's also give these times are also giving birth to a lot of genius level artists, right? I think they're just far and few in between. Um, and unfortunately they're not getting the attention they deserve because there's so much distraction with this other stuff. But hopefully this film, the success of this film, makes way for other people to come through with something that has a lot of honest heart and intention, and does some social good. Because the thing that people always respect is numbers.
Exactly.
And as much as I hate the algorithms, and the algorithms aren't in favor of true art right now, if we create some amazing art that does its numbers, then hopefully it'll open the door for other films like this, and other artists and other mediums to follow suit, in music and fashion, and other areas.
So tell us more about Suicide Saint and how is it correlating with mental health? Because I know mental health is a big thing about this film in the Black and Brown communities, but I just want you to tell the listeners more about how this is directly related to mental health.
Uh, Absolutely. The two of the main characters, they're both lead characters, Vincent Cross and Thomas Meadow, respectively deal with hypervigilance, schizophrenia. The other character deals with PTSD and identity crisis. The experience of the film, because as much as it is about this dynamic storyline and intricacies of the characters and the story arc, it's even more an experiential film of feeling this visually immersive um, world of understanding what the characters are going through, right? And the way we shoot it and stylizations and some of the effects. It's a sci-fi drama, so it I can't give away too much of the creative because even in our marketing
Right.
we're being very vague. So I don't want to go too much into it, but it definitively addresses issues that people are going to be able to relate to, and we all relate to. And
Definitely.
more about me doing interviews is not so much talking about the film as it is much about the issues, because I'm not here today to sell the film, as crazy as that sounds. I'm using the film to push the issue. And most people are just, they just want to sell their goods, right? And it makes sense because if the film doesn't do well, then people don't get the message. But I think
Right.
we're not chasing after anything. We want to create intrigue and let people be pulled in. Um,
No, but
but
I definitely think that mental health is something that needs to be addressed, especially in the Black and Brown communities. A lot of times we like to act like there isn't a problem. We like to try to minimize mental illnesses and mental health issues. So, having platforms like yourself, putting that out there and educating the masses about mental health is a huge thing, and we should uplift it more.
thank you for recognizing and appreciating that, and thank you for letting me come on a shot of facts to
Yeah.
get the,
Yeah, I
cheers
definitely,
to the
one of
shot
my
of facts.
main, thank you. Yeah, one of my main points of topics to discuss is mental health, especially my demographic is the youth, it's college students, college graduates, and whether people like to believe it or not, a lot of youth have mental health problems. They don't know how to address it. They don't know how to go about it. They don't know how to get help. So the more that we normalize that it is okay to address these issues by media, by film, by influencers, by artists, then we can further increase productivity in our society, honestly.
Absolutely, and that's a great point, right? It's about increasing productivity in our society, right? Us being able to live healthier and happier lives and being more engaged, because mental health impacts every thought that we have in every second
Right.
of the day, in every relationship we have with loved ones, with strangers, with coworkers. And it's unfortunate that in schools and our education system, uh, they teach math and science and these other things, and then you go to college and they teach you, give you information to follow a career and make money, but they never teach you anything early on in terms of just
Exactly.
how to manage, and something as simple as how to like manage and regulate your mood, right? And then you have kids who have all this adversity at home, and they're coming into the school environment, and the school that's supposed to be there helping to educate the kids can't even educate them because the kids are hung up about something personal where they have some anxiety or depression or whatever that doesn't even allow them to exercise their ability to learn, right? So now they're failing
Exactly.
in school, and it becomes a downward spiral. And I think if they just spent more time on you know giving giving people the tools that they need to build their mind and their mental stability, this would lead to everything else that you do in life, and give you much more success, and also allow us to understand each other more. Right? I've never seen this world so divided. I've never seen this country so polarized. I've never seen so
Tell me
much
about it.
hate. Like there's just an enormous amount of hate. And while all these protests are amazing, and it's great to have some accountability and action for things that are just far overdue that shouldn't still be happening, we also have to be conscious about how we're going about that we're not replacing one hate for another, right? Because now there's just this big push that everything is anti-white, and
Mhm.
I think the argument needs to be that we want to get to a point of equality. We don't want to replace one supremacy with another supremacy, right?
Right.
So I think it's beautiful that everybody is feeling empowered, and then there's compassion for our communities, for Black and Latino communities. But I think as our voices become bigger and we're pushing our narrative and the cultural shift is changing, not enough in Hollywood, unfortunately. It's great to see that we're dominating sports in other areas. Not that we should be dominating, right? I'm going back to my argument of it needing to be equal, not us,
Exactly right.
taking over. But unfortunately, in film, of commercially released directors in the last few years, 94% were Caucasian and like 4% were black, and then like 1% was Latino.
Mhm.
Um, Even so, Latinos won best director at the Oscars 3 out of the last 4 years. So
Yeah.
having
So
the
how do you
smallest,
even maneuver through being a minority in filmmaking? Because it's always some type of barrier between any type of, I guess, career wise or anything. I don't want to go back into the entertainment business, but there's always some type of barrier of becoming successful when you're black or brown. So how did you maneuver through that barrier yourself?
well, I don't think, I think my it I didn't face those barriers in the same way. And the reason I'll say this is because I didn't go traditionally through the system.
Mhm.
So there was no system to affect me. I built everything entirely independent of the system. Like most people go to college, then they go from college, and then if they make their thesis film, then they might be in film festivals. A studio might pick them up, or they might get
Right.
that look. So if I was at NYU or USC or somewhere, and I was amongst a group of people, and I saw other white students getting you know cherry picked by Paramount or different studios or agents or whatever, maybe I would have been more impacted by that because I would have felt some type of way. But I didn't go to college. I never interned for a corporation. I never, a lot of the peers that I now have in the industry came up through the ranks of working at MTVs or the major brands, ad agencies. That wasn't my story. It was entirely outside of that system, and I built my brand. Not till later in my career, the first job I ever took was working with Puffy, and I turned that down the first two times they asked me. I wasn't because I had built the first film studio in the Bronx, and I was
Right.
very successful as an independent entrepreneur. And then one day I was like, maybe let me try a little bit of this advertising thing, and it was cool, and I learned something from a different side of it. But I knew even more then that I wasn't built for that uh, corporate mentality because everybody's throwing each other under the bus, and there's this trying to dog eat dog motto to get to the top. And I come from a world of my objective is always to serve the brand, right? I'm not thinking about my position and my status. I'm thinking about the product has to be hot. We could all share the credit, but like if the product ain't hot, then um, everybody loses. So not that there was an unhealthy organization there. I'm not specifically speaking about Combs Enterprises because there was a lot of amazing
In which you just
executives and staff.
shameless plug. You worked with the Ciroc campaign. You also worked with Russell Simmons as well with the what was it, Rush Card, and you worked
Yeah,
with a
yeah,
lot of
I did.
campaigns as
I,
well.
w- I was the executive producer at for Puff's company. I did all the campaigns for Ciroc and Sean John
Mhm.
and Deleon. So I was across the empire, the
Right.
$800 million empire. I was doing all the advertising. But there were some really terrific people within the organization. A good person I'm really good friends with to this day, Nick Storm. He was director of national promotions for Ciroc and was really, you know, big part of that machine behind the brand. Previously, having done Hypnotic from the ground up, and he was in Asia Mob, and we worked on some other stuff together. Um, but yeah, Rush Card was cool. I was part of rebranding Rush Card, and then they sold the Green Dot for 150 million. But
Right.
I didn't feel fulfilled in advertising. It's amazing to be in charge of $3 million commercials and cutting checks and feeding other people and putting people on and doing something that um, has some validity in terms of like career, but it didn't mean much to me. Like it wasn't the same um,
As being as
impact.
your own boss,
Well,
creating
we're
your
not even
own
being my own boss, but creating something that has an impact,
right.
right? Like I just feel like I can do anything to make money. If I just do something to make money that only serves me and my family, we all got to eat. But if it doesn't do anything for anybody else, even though in the ecosystem of the industry, if I'm still helping a few people, but if I'm creating a film that can, you know, change humanities, right? Like we're so divided, right? Like how do we get to a point of being more united? Like if this film, you know, sparks an interest or creates a wave, and other filmmakers start to create content like that, think about all the negative influence of films. You know, there was films historically that painted us in a certain light that
Exactly.
perpetuated a stereotype that led to years more of oppression and other circumstances. You know, whether it was just conditioning more white people to think this way about black people, or you know, whatever the differences are in different racial groups or ethnicities, because oppression exists in all societies. It's not just a black or white thing. You go to
Right.
Africa, you have government leaders, corruption, an oppressed class, you know, India, wherever. It doesn't matter. We're it's part of our human nature that power corrupts.
Yeah, I definitely can agree that we do need more positive reinforcement through film because that is a fact that perception, visual perception is huge with your mindset and your psyche and what you think of other people and other cultures. So having films discussing these hard topics that we all need to discuss, these are important. And I discuss this with my friends a lot, how much the media warps your mindset about people that you have never even met before, or even concept or mindsets about different things. So I definitely do agree that we need more films. We need more think pieces out there to help people think about more than just the minuscule social media things or the stereotypes. So yeah, I definitely can agree with that. And just going into your activism, since we're kind of talking about that a little bit. So you kind of mentioned your sick film school a little bit. So can you talk about that a little bit more and how you help? Was it school kids in the New York area with film school and basically addressing gun violence in that area?
Yeah, we started the SICK Film School last year. SIC, again, I think I mentioned earlier, stands for
Mhm.
Social Impact Content. And the idea is that we're not just educating filmmakers, right? People can go any film school to learn. There's a bunch of film schools, and then now more than ever, you don't even need to go to film school. You could just get on a set somewhere as PA.
Right.
There's a million tutorials online. Everybody's got a tutorial on how to light a scene, set up a camera. I mean, when I started out, as successful as I am now, I never went to film school. I never went to any college. I didn't have YouTube then. I didn't have any tutorials. Like I had to teach myself how to edit. All these different things, just figure it out. So you can. People are in this generation is much more intuitive with technology. So you can figure that part of it out. Um, the purpose and the reason I wanted to start a film school now, it's uh, it's 2.0 of guns for cameras. Back in 2005, there weren't enough filmmakers from our community, right? This is
Right.
before Instagram. This is before YouTube exploded. You know, when I picked up a camera, all my friends on the block were laughing at me, right? Because it just wasn't a thing. Like if you were a
Right.
thug, you didn't touch a computer. There was just like a complete disconnect between those two realities. Now it's like the biggest gangsters are on social media, right?
Right.
Or they think they are, right? Or even the real ones are actually like they're on there too. They stunting and trolling, and there's like, but there's no separation from it, right? So um, I started Guns for Cameras in 2005 to take guns off the street and give away video cameras, and I was hoping that not only would I save some lives by empowering. You can't tell somebody not to do something unless you're providing them with an opportunity.
Exactly.
It comes back to everybody got to eat. So you can't preach or dictate, or you can't use fear tactics when a person has nothing to lose. Like you have to give them an opportunity. You have to give them something else to do. And the film camera, I saw at that point before it was popular that it was a powerful alternative because you still point and shoot, you know, but you're pointing and shoot a camera that creates like
Right.
an opportunity. So I was teaching young kids to aim to live. You know, fast forward 15 years later, and also the other byproduct of that I was looking for as an objective of Guns for Cameras was that these kids would pick up a camera, not only save their lives, but then be able to go out into the industry and hopefully help diversify the the corporate ranks, raise up in their career to kind of change the narrative in the media, right? If someone went onto news networks or movie studios or whatever, because the view back then was much more skewed. Thankfully, today there's a bigger cultural shift. Um, there's a lot more recognition. It's like actually in now, right? To be like every major brand is supporting Black Lives Matter. So culturally, there's no longer racism. And when I say culturally, it's like if anybody says anything online racist, they're immediately canceled, they're
Right.
fired, or whatever.
I still think it needs
No,
it, we're gonna have a
there's a
long
difference.
road to go,
I'm
but
making
we are
I'm making
making more progression.
but I'm listen. I'm making two very clear distinctions.
Hmm.
Culturally,
Right.
as a society, there isn't any more racism because we've all agreed as a social contract that this is something that's not acceptable. So
Right.
people can't just outright do it. But systematically,
Oh yeah.
there's still a huge amount of racism, and that's where the bigger problem is because that's where you have the difference in the criminal system. A judge giving this white boy, probation, and then for the same charge or the same drugs, with locking this person up for 15 years, or from the historically of what happened with real estate and redlining and not selling properties to certain communities, like
Right.
it just devastated us and put us back so far to an opportunity now. The obstacles are really challenging to overcome. But I'm just saying culturally, hip hop music is the dominant music in the world, right? In the U.S. market, it's bigger than like 27% market share. So there's no question about there. We talk about the NBA, the NFL. We're leading the leagues in star performance athletes, endorsements. Um, Culturally, Black Lives Matter is very relevant in society. This is why the movement and the process, the protests have taken hold to such a great extent. You have people around the world, millions of people around the world, people in France or Europe and other countries doing Black Lives Matters protests for shootings that are happening here in the United States. So we're in a much different space than we were just a few years ago, right? So it's great that that's changing. But back to what I was saying about the progression from Guns for Cameras to the Sick Film School. Now I feel like the onus is more on you have these influencers and you have these people who know how to create content and they're getting millions of views, millions of followers, and now it's a matter of them being responsible with that voice, right? So the purpose of this Sick Film School is not just film education, but it's film education accompanied with this social impact. We're only nurturing voices to create social impact content, whether
Right.
it's creating documentaries or films. The content they create has to help amplify the message of some charity or organization in society. Um, and they have to do stuff for social good, or just don't sign up, don't come to the school. But
Right.
for the people who are, last year we took 30 kids out of Queens in partnership with Erica Ford's Life Camp organization, and worked with kids who were affected by gun violence. And I gave the kids all a free 10-week film class, and each week they went to a different place. We brought them to the YouTube
That's
space in New
beautiful.
York.
That's
Shout out
wonderful.
to Adam Rellis and Michelle Joyce for hooking that up, and Marcel's our marketing director for the film. But it's for me, it comes back to we getting out of this space of being so obsessed with our freedom of speech and our personal liberties, and reinvesting in a social contract that we're not in this world alone.
Right.
Everything shouldn't be me, me, me. Like people won't wear masks. Oh, I have my freedoms. Fuck your freedoms. Your freedoms are
Thank you.
intertwined
Thank
with
you.
all of our freedoms. It's not about like you're. It's what I mean. Like people get so obsessed with thinking that the world owes them something.
Selfishness. It's
Yeah. So
selfish.
I think um, we just had to have more compassion and love and understanding, and be more considerate that we're all in this together.
Right. So, with that being said, what do you feel is the next step for the SICK Film School, or even more films upcoming for you in the future?
Well, we are talking. We are talking to YouTube about potentially doing something, a bigger partnership with them. They've been supported over the school in the past. We have our new series on there now that we just launched for the month of September,
Right.
um, Suicide Prevention Month, or Suicide Awareness Month. And I hope that we can engage in partnerships with more schools that are doing film education to get them to get some of their students to think more about social impact, that we can engage with more brands. So when they're creating the narratives, whether it's in advertising and how they're promoting products, they're doing it in a more responsible way. And then especially just in the studios, that they greenlight more films like this.
Definitely.
I'm making it personally difficult for myself to follow this path because I want to do it a very defined way, not because I'm trying to prevent the success of this film, but I feel like I have to take on every challenge. I have to take the hard route every time, because when the film is successful, I know I'm going to make it successful. Everything I've ever done in my career has been super successful, being honored by two presidents, like I'm not even going to go through my resume, but it's I'm willing to take every challenge instead of going the routes that I know where I could have had this done in a way that it would have been a lot easier and a
Right.
lot sooner and a lot whatever else, but it wouldn't have had the same impact. And some of those other burdens I'm unnecessarily taking just so I can make room for other people to come through and have this access. Because the biggest problem in any industry is access. So any
Right.
of your viewers, you want to get into film production, you want to get an acting, whatever it is. Our lead is a relatively unknown actor, right? He's a successful musician and entrepreneur with his fashion line, and he's been in a couple of small things. But it's in terms of Hollywood's, the way they look at it, they don't know him. They never heard of him. It's like, and early on, where I was talking to distributors, we were considering pre-selling our foreign rights. They're like, oh, who's your lead? If you put this other guy in, and we'll give you this much money. I'm like, forget it. I'm like,
Right.
conversation over. Like I'm not playing to the system's rules.
Yeah. So one last thing I actually want to ask you, with going about mental health and overall suicide awareness, do you believe that the industry and society is basically more putting out awareness? Do you think they're doing a better job about mental health? And if not, how do you think we should go about bringing more awareness?
You have some good questions. I will say this: last year, when because I did a year of research before I even started writing the script, and I had ideas. But last year, while I was putting this film together, I got another project. I was blessed to have another project just fall into my lap. We're doing the Hector Camacho movie after this, and everyone around me was like, even they know my heart and my passion for social impact and everything I've done in my career, like, is geared to that. They're like, well, you got to do the Hector movie because you this is gonna easily do 400 million, right? Like,
Right.
he's such an icon, and nobody was checking for or talking or even thinking about mental health. Um, no, no discredit to the organizations that are working hard every day, but I just mean on a national, like, mainstream level, right? It
Right.
wasn't a relevant conversation. And then even at the beginning of this, when coronavirus and the deaths started to go up. I don't know what we're at. I don't know. I haven't checked, but what are we at? 300,000 deaths maybe globally.
Yeah,
Um,
I know the US is number one right now.
but if you compare that, and not that that should ever be a comparison, but just to put it in perspective, 800,000 people die from suicide every year.
Mm.
Like, and we have all this ascension for COVID, and obviously it's more about it prevention attention, because if we don't practice social distance and wearing a mask, which I'm a huge advocate of, take this shit very seriously. I lost a brother-in-law and family members to coronavirus, but it's given so much attention because then it's also politicized, and then there's all other agendas built around it in terms of fear-based marketing. But why aren't we talking about the real realities of things that we can fix that'll make our lives better, right? Going back to what you said earlier on, in the conversation of us just being more productive if this is something we address. So, fast forward, um, one of the silver linings in all this tragedy around the pandemic, is that there is much more awareness now today around mental health,
Right.
because there's been such a huge spike in issues, domestic violence, divorce rates, all these different things, people being depressed, isolated, um, high levels of anxiety. Now it's a national conversation. Now people are talking about it, and now like in the last couple of weeks, I've seen a few headlines in the film industry, other movies coming out addressing mental health. And while this was a struggle for me before to get to this point, I'm glad that the world's going to be more receiving of it. But the bigger thing that I'm happy about is that the attention is going to be there, right? Because for me doing this film, it's not for me to have any personal gain. It's just to help. If somebody else copies the movie and puts it out before mine and they win a bunch of awards, I'm not gonna be mad at that. It's like you're doing the work. The objective is that people are impacted by the subject matter, and we change the conversation and people get help.
Yeah, well, I love the message that you are putting out to the masses to get more educated about mental health. And I love it what you have done overall in your career as far as activism and helping the Black and Brown communities. So, my actual last question to you is where can we, as the listeners and myself, can find you social media wise, websites, or anything?
Instagram. I'm on YouTube. Our new series on mental health is on YouTube. I'm on Facebook, but I don't check that much. But my IG, I don't know if I said earlier. I was thinking about saying it. Maybe I didn't finish the thought. But when I was talking about access, I'm always willing to help put people on. So I respond to every DM. If you shoot me a DM, as long as it's about business,
Right.
you shoot me a DM.
No shooting the shots in the
Yeah,
DM.
yeah, no sliding. Yeah, if you shoot me DM about that you want to get into production, as long as you're passionate about it. I don't want to just take people who are just on a whim, like, oh, this might be cool. No, like if you've really been putting in the work and putting in the hours and you have the talent, but your problem is access, right? You're not able to get that in. I'm always trying to plug people in and put them on, whether are join my crew or I just refer you to somebody else, because I have such a large network of people that I'm connected to. And you don't have to have the experience, right? I'm not one of these people who's, oh, let me see your resume and what have you done before.
Right.
When Mark Zuckerberg started Facebook, he never did a social network before that, right? There was no precedence
Exactly.
for you knowing what success he was capable of. So I don't treat anybody, no matter how early on in their career they are, I don't judge them. Not for their experience, but purely for their talent and their work ethic. So yeah, DM me, and it's all the same. Hezues R, Hezuesr, at all my social, and then the website is HezuesR.com as well. So
Okay, guys, you heard it. I will make sure to add all of Jesus' information in the show notes. And again, I just want to thank you so much for taking the time out to discuss mental health and suicide saint with us. Actually, one last question. I keep saying
go
one
for it.
last question. I just want to ask you, do you have any last words of recommendation, advice, or just anything that you want the listeners to know as we end this episode?
Yeah, I think if you're an artist, whether if you're a filmmaker, I like to speak to people based on the experience I have, because I can be more and have a more intelligent opinion on that, right? If you're a filmmaker or artist or storyteller in any medium, um, embrace what makes you different, and the things that make you different, even if it's not popular at the time, is going to connect with somebody else out there who might be different and might be feeling alone. Um, so you have an audience, and you can find your audience if you stay true to yourself, and just be passionate, be emphatic about staying true to your vision. Don't compromise, um, unless it's a creative compromise. You're working with other great creatives, but don't compromise for money or anything else that's gonna water down the essence of who you are and what your voice is, and just try to make the dopest shit you can make. Don't half-ass it. Like if you're gonna be a monkey, be a gorilla. You know what I mean? Like just go
Right.
all out. give it your all, and be a beast about it. Yeah, and tag me, send it to me. I like to discover new artists and check out new things. So
All right,
this
y'all
this is
heard
this
it.
is
New things. Y'all better tag Jesus in it, okay? He's not saying this just for fun. Y'all need, this is a call to action. Y'all need to actually do it. But
hit
yeah,
me up.
thank you so much for taking the time out again to discuss this with us. And with that being said, I will talk to you later. Thanks.
Thanks. This is Hezues R, and this was your shot of facts.